Specific questions and order in which they are asked is at my discretion, and I reviewed them in advance, modifying or editing similar questions to avoid redundancy. Now I'd like to introduce the candidates. Starting from your left, we have Dr. Stanley Bach, Amitava Das, Dr. Shari Liu, and Susan Rosenzweig. The following guidelines for the evening must be followed, and these were sent to the candidates ahead of time. No letters or statements by absent candidates will be read, only the candidates present may speak. We ask the audience to hold its applause until the end in order for the moderator to ask as many questions as possible. There will be a moderator and timekeeper from Suffolk Region PTA. Each candidate will be allowed 3 minutes to make a presentation stating qualifications and reasons for running. When the 3 minutes are up, the timekeeper will ring a bell to signify that the sentence must be completed. All questions will be written on index cards, reviewed and selected by the moderator. Questions will be asked of all candidates. Any questions addressed to only one individual or those which contain personal attacks will be discarded. The moderator will make the final decision regarding all questions. You may not necessarily hear your question in the way it was written. Each candidate is given the opportunity to answer each question in 1 minute. When the minute is up, the timekeeper will ring the bell, indicating the candidate must finish the sentence. No rebuttals are allowed during the question and answer period. Each candidate will then be allowed 2 minutes to make a closing statement after the last question has been answered. At this time, candidates can make rebuttals. The length of the program will be determined by the moderator prior to the beginning of the evening. As we are running very far behind, I'm going to decide when I ask the last question. It'll probably be, depending upon how quickly we go through the answers to the questions, it's 8:15 to 8:30 or thereabouts. Presentations will be in alphabetical order, and closing statements will be in reverse alphabetical order. No literature may be given out at this meeting by a candidate or the candidate's supporters. The moderator reserves the right to end the program at any time if they deem it necessary. So now we are going to begin with the 3-minute opening statements. We will start, and I received permission from each candidate to refer to them by their first name so that we can fit more questions in. So for the first opening statement, we are going to start with Stan.
Thank you. Happy Teacher Appreciation Week, everyone. My name is Stanley Bach, and I am a parent of 3 young children, with my oldest attending Mount Elementary. I'm also an educator. I teach computer science at the university level, and I run a research lab investigating the safety of artificial intelligence. This involves budgeting and managing millions of dollars of funds from private companies, the National Science Foundation, and the Department of Defense. In my role at the university, I also help evaluate applicants for graduate admissions to the university. I look through the applications of hundreds of excellent students and try to find small things in their application that make them stand out. In the past, I have also worked for 5 years as a civil servant for the Air Force Research Laboratory, both in upstate New York and at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. I come from a family of educators. My parents were high school teachers, my grandparents were teachers, I have cousins, aunts, uncles, all involved in education. I have a strong respect for the work that teachers do and the opportunity that public school provides. Every child, regardless of their background or ability, deserves a safe and healthy school environment with the opportunity to get a high-quality education. I'm running for school board because I want our schools to remain strong. Our district is currently navigating significant financial challenges. This year, the state threatened to reduce our aid by millions of dollars. Although most of this money was restored this time, Reductions in state aid are a real possibility in the coming years, and this needs to be planned for. Families and residents in our district are also facing their own financial pressure, and they would like some relief. We need a long-term financial plan, one that recognizes our community's needs, and one that can sustainably provide excellent programs and services for all of our students. As a parent with 3 young children, I have a vested interest in the long-term health of all of our schools. Kids grow up fast, and I want to make sure that at all levels, elementary, junior high, and high school, we will have excellent programs for many years to come. Just yesterday, the Mount PTA had a fundraiser at Mickey's Ice Cream, where my daughter and I were served ice cream by teachers and principals. While our children played, I naturally talked with the other elementary school parents, and they raised many legitimate concerns related to school. While more than half of our school's grade levels are at the elementary level, our Board of Education does not have any direct representation for these families. I'm sure board members and the superintendent are happy to listen to anyone, but direct contact with the schools provides an organic source of information into how things are being run and gets these issues taken seriously. Representation matters. I will help bring this perspective to the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Ami?
Thank you. Good evening. I've been a resident of the Three Village since about 2007, and our son is currently in the 9th grade at R.C. Murphy. We chose to move here back in 2007 because of the reputation of the educational programs here. We attribute much of his success here today to the tireless work of teachers and staff and the variety of programs that are available at R.C. Murphy and the entire school, and the administration's collaborative and personalized approach to meet students' needs. These range from a variety of adjustments from peanut allergies, dealing with COVID-related times when we were forced to operate in classes of upwards of 30 people in a single hybrid classroom, and teachers making the effort to support those, and the administration making the effort to support these efforts. These are the kind of things where parents, students, teachers have all come together for the betterment of the program, for the betterment of the students, and it's something that needs to continue to be supported. However, as I'm reminded twice a year regularly by the town of Brookhaven, I'm also a taxpayer in this district. And that leads me to need to balance the quality of these programs with the financial burden that one must take on, both for the houses, the cost of housing, and as well for taxes. For the past 6 years, I've worked as a customer engineering leader at a global technology organization. I have about 25 years of experience in technology leadership and in managing proposals and collaborations with external partners and their clients. These have included advisory and executive management at Fortune 500 and public sector and healthcare companies. And these 2 decades of professional experience and managing to profit and loss statements of over $100+ million have made me adept at balancing multiple stakeholder interests to find common grounds with a strong focus on outcomes. We only win when everybody wins, and that's been the idea of running collaborative, communicative, and sometimes make sacrifices towards a common mission. Education is the cornerstone of a civil society and a basic human right. And to achieve these possible outcomes for our children, it is vital for us to take a collaborative approach. And channeling my professional experience in both business and education, I intend to support our district's mission through close collaboration with parents, taxpayers, staff, and my fellow members of the board. I'm deeply passionate about education. As has been seen, I've been teaching courses on top of my regular job for about 20+ years in computer science, finance, management, and data analytics. And beyond adult age learners, I also continue to volunteer to teach computer science to kids age 6 to 9, from grade 6 to 9. Thank you.
Thank you. Shall
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Shari Lee. I have served in the Three Village Board of Education for the past 3 years with Sue together. I hope that we have helped move the district in a direction that students, parents, and the community are happy to see. There are still room to improve, and we're working hard on that. I have 2 children in the district, a boy in Jolinas and a girl in Melville. I myself hold a doctorate degree in electrical engineering from Columbia University, and I worked in the industry and national labs for 17 years. I currently work in an early-stage tech startup on microelectronics for quantum computing that I founded in 2020. I have also served on committees and boards of professional and nonprofit organizations. I am willing to dedicate my STEM experience, leadership, and management skills, social and professional networks to bring our students easy access to educational and career development opportunities. In particular, I have a strong belief that student success comes in all areas and forms. So it's important to create an environment that encourages every student to maximize his and her potential. As a board member, I was willing to bring my passion to life and my analytical skills to complicated problems to help build an efficient and effective board and help advance our students to a higher level of achievements in areas that they truly love. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan?
Good evening. Thank you so much to the PTA and to Ward Melville for hosting us, and thank you to everybody viewing. I ran to join the Board of Ed 3 years ago as a natural progression of my 20-plus years of serving our schools and community. As a scout leader, a classroom volunteer, a PTA president in 3 schools plus the Joint Council, and more. Teachers knew I would always jump in to support any school activity, and principals knew they could rely on me to bring new ideas to the table, things like the Flame Challenge and the One Book, One School program. They knew I'd not only propose these enriching experiences for our students, but I would be at their side to do the work to make them happen under budget and on time. Raising 4 children here has shown me that our schools are amazing and getting better, and I wanted to run so that I could be part of that progress. Since joining the board, I have served as vice president for my first year and as president for the past 2 years. It's been humbling to come into a fuller understanding of everything that's involved in running this district, and I actively seek out every opportunity to deepen that knowledge. It's been a focus of mine to open the doors to some of that insight to our community. I respect how expensive it is to live here, and I believe showing you more of what's involved and how your tax dollars are spent and how the district is working aggressively to tighten up our finances is beneficial to all of us. I've also worked hard for the administration and board not just to show, but to listen. I created the Coffee with Kevin gathering so that you can come, ask questions directly of our superintendent, share an opinion, make a suggestion in a very relaxed setting, and actually get a face-to-face response in real time. In addition, I personally will talk to anyone, anytime. You can just ask my kids how many calls I get each day, how many people I'm out meeting with, and I'm very happy to do it because it is important that you feel heard and that your input is considered in every single decision that we make. When you vote on May 21st, you have to make the best decision for your family and your circumstances. How do you choose who you want to be your stand-in in the boardroom? I hope you consider a lot of things. Who shares your values on both education and finances? Who is fair and impartial? Who is able to work by consensus when votes go their way and when they do not? Who will provide oversight to be sure the needs of every student and every type of learner are met? I believe I have proven to be a dedicated trustee who comes prepared, has no personal agenda, is independent in my decision-making, fiscally conservative, fair, and a fervent supporter of public education. It's truly an honor to be part of helping prepare and launch our children into lives of purpose and promise, and I'd be very grateful for your vote to continue this work. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we will start with our first question. Each candidate gets 1 minute to answer the question. We will start with Stan. What duties, committees, activities, etc., have you been actively involved in within the district and community?
So I'm a parent in the district. So parents in the district, I mean, of course, they can come to our Board of Education, they can send the messages, they can talk to the superintendent, but we have thousands of parents in the district. So my primary way of interacting with activities in the district were from the events that were organized by the district for parents. So we had several Meet the Superintendent events, Coffee with Kevin. So I went there and I expressed what I thought were ways we could improve our district without spending a lot of money. These were things like better testing at the elementary level. So we have, like iReady tests where in the past, you get a test back from your teacher, you can see what you got wrong and you can improve. Now you get a test, you get back a score, you don't know what you did wrong. I expressed my concern for discipline classrooms and if teachers and if admin are supporting teachers. I was concerned about cell phones in classrooms and how teachers are essentially asked to be the cell phone police. From that, I was invited to be on the cell phone committee, so I was a parent representative on that committee, and so I made my views heard, and I hope I contributed positively in that aspect.
Thank you. Ami?
Thank you. So I've always loved teaching and education, so I've taken opportunities to bring technology into the classrooms. I was able to run programs, I think for third graders, where we were able to teach them about what it means to be a software engineer, what does it mean to be a developer, what skills are needed, and then take them on a virtual trip of some forests and mangroves through virtual reality technology. For the community, I was a participant on the BAC, the Budget Advisory Committee, which ended a few weeks ago. And I was able to influence and participate in the discussions to gain opinion from the community, which further informed the board for our budget priorities.
Thank you. Shari?
Yes. So my family moved to the district 10 years ago, and my daughter was in second grade at the time. I started giving lectures to elementary kids on research projects I was doing with the national lab, like what we do detectors for NASA's missions. And I feel like the excitement I see from the kids really excited me. So this is where I started involved in school district. When my kids goes to Science Olympia competitions in junior high schools, I started help coaching some of the works they are doing there. And then later on, I started joining some PTA meetings, and that's when I started learning about the Board of Ed, and I started running for the board. That's how I work too.
Thank you. Susan?
I've been involved nonstop since I had children. Before I had kids, I was a broadcast journalist, and I was able to pause that and give this my full attention. So in addition to the PTA, before coming to the board, I was on site-based management teams. I was part of the the reopening committee back in the COVID days when we were making a determination whether or not we would reopen. I have been integrally involved in all of the committees since I joined the board. So I sit on a couple of committees, but I also attend every possible meeting. So I go to all the BAC meetings, the bond meetings, the restructuring meetings. I've tried to keep a hand in everything and stay connected to the community and see people in person so that I know how they feel about what's going on.
Thank you. Okay, our next question, we're going to start with Ami. If elected, what do you anticipate your biggest contribution to the Board of Education will be?
So the board is coming up on some important decisions to be made. Several contracts are coming up for renewal, and overall, I find that the school district is run fairly and very well. What I hope to provide is a level of governance, one, and two, a collaborative approach to meeting with all the stakeholders so that these decisions can be made in the best interests of the students, the parents, and the taxpayers. It's critical that all the stakeholders come together and collaborate on this in order to make sure that we have successful outcomes at the end of the day. So I hope to bring that business expertise and the ability to work with multiple stakeholders.
Thank you. Shari?
Yes. So in the past 3 years, I think I see the most difficult task for the board is to provide the programs and extra programs that our students needed at a very limited budget. So how to run this becomes an issue. There are different interests from students. We see the needs, but we have very limited budget. How do we run this? So the board worked very hard to try to find out ways to generate revenue and to get inputs from parents, community, students, from all the inputs and see where we could shift our focus, maybe from one area to the other area, but still keep the quality of the education. So I think this is the way what I really want to contribute, because the needs of the students are actually moving to the advanced technology side. So we really hope to provide more STEM-related activities. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan?
I think the biggest thing that I would bring is stability and continuity. The learning curve when you first start, it's steep. There's a lot to process through, to understand education law, just to get your feet in wet and be grounded and be ready to begin to make decisions. Having been there for the last 3 years and being part of some of the things that we have underway now, I think I will be able to jump in immediately and continue that work, specifically with restructuring and financially. You know, we are facing some big changes, big potential changes, and some heavy needs. The community wants us to be responsive, of course, and manage their tax dollars efficiently, and that is becoming more and more difficult to do. So there's going to be a lot of work ahead of us, and I think having some stable voices in the room will be helpful.
Thank you. Stan?
Plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. Right? This is a quote from Eisenhower. And I think if it's possible for Eisenhower to create plans for all of Allied military operations in Europe in World War II, it should be possible for us to create long-term plans for our school district. Now, of course, I know the plan will be wrong as the situation changes year to year, but it will provide a transparent document to the community with an ordering of our priorities and our best possible prediction for when they will be implemented. For example, at the Civics Association event on Monday, a question was asked about getting foreign language instruction into our elementary schools and how we could do it. When I looked at previous board election articles from 5 years ago, they were also talking about languages in elementary schools. This is an expensive thing to do, and if we want to really get it done, we need a multi-year plan. If this is a priority of our district and it's something we want to get done, the only way to do it is with a long-term plan, and I think that's really the most important thing that I could contribute to.
Thank you. Okay, our next question will start with Showry. What is a school board member's role and responsibility? How is that role different from the role of the superintendent or administration?
So the board is in governments mainly to help define the policy of the district, and we really dedicate all the operation to the superintendent and the administration. So often we get feedback from the community, the teachers, students, and see if there's anything in the policy that we actually try to improve. And for the goal of education, the board also set the goal every year and see if that fits what we needed. And we reflect on the goal, whether we achieve it or there's still room to improve. So that's mainly what the board is doing. Also, the board is having negotiations with different groups, and we try to provide a reasonable negotiation price at the time, but because we are always limited by the budget, we couldn't go over, and we really need to be negotiate at our point. Just try to keep the quality of the education.
Thank you. Susan?
So the board's primary charges are to set policy, to ensure that there's a workable budget every year, and to hire and supervise a superintendent. Obviously, it goes much deeper than that, but those are the primary, and I think every once in a while it's really helpful to me to remind ourselves of that, and that we're supposed to be kind of flying at 30,000 feet, not on the ground with the administration, with the teachers and staff. They are the professionals doing their job, and it's not our responsibility to be in there micromanaging them in any way. That's the superintendent's job. But beyond that, we do have to, a big part of it is negotiating contracts, and we have several on the table right now, and of course the teacher's contract coming up next year. And that is, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of responsibility, it is deeply meaningful to everybody on both sides of the table, and we need to come at that from a position of cooperation and trust and good faith, and I look forward to doing that.
Thank you. Stan?
So I do think a teacher's perspective is important when setting policy for the district, because we set policy at a very high level, and this gets implemented through different layers all the way down to teachers who are actually on the ground, and they're the ones interacting with the students. And they can see what works and what doesn't work, right? And so as a board member, of course, our job is not to micromanage. The superintendent manages the admin manages the teachers, but we do need to be aware of teachers' perspectives on the policies that we're creating. I mean, our role really is, and the reason why it's an elected position is we're asked to make trade-offs where there's no correct answer, right? Do we, if we have an extra $2 or $3 million, do we give this money to taxpayers? Do we hire extra psychologists? Do we hire elementary school teachers? Do we have recess twice a day? Or there's a million different ways you could spend money that would improve education. And none of the answers are correct. So we're representatives of the community and the community's values. And that's how we should be deciding which policy is the correct one.
Thank you. Ami?
So the board, whether of a corporation or in case an educational institution is elected to represent the interests of the community, and in this case, the taxpayers, our role on the board is to hire the right individuals who will make decisions and run the organization for the best possible outcomes of delivering education. The few other ways that a board member typically helps is in providing expertise, in making a network effect, in connecting the board to other experts in the area, and to help the board make decisions that are financially responsible while continuing the mission of the organization. So those, I believe, are the board's functions, and I hope to be able to help with that with my colleagues.
Thank you. Okay, our next question will begin with Susan. What programs will you prioritize protecting if the governor maintains course with reducing state aid in future years?
That's a really tough question, and I think it's going to be a moving target as we progress. But the overarching answer is, I think I have to imagine myself in a child's body and going through a day, whether I'm in kindergarten or whether I'm in 12th grade. What do I need? What do I need out of this experience? Because the product is their education. So what is crucial, what is critical to me coming out of here educated and well prepared and civically responsible, and what is maybe an extra? And it's a lot of those extras that we're going to have to peel away, and that's hard because your favorite extra might not be my favorite extra. So we're going to have to work very collaboratively and be very responsive to the community in hearing what people are willing to perhaps part with, hopefully temporarily, and what is an absolute must-save. But obviously at the core is proper and rigorous academics.
Thank you. Stan?
So I think, Suzanne, I think that's actually a great answer, right? So the core mission of our schools is to educate our students, and I think the majority of that is what happens, from the time the bell rings at the beginning of the day until the end of the day. That's the core mission. That's what I would strive to protect the most, right? Of course, school is more than just what happens between those times. I do, recognize that we do have, we have clubs, we have sports, we have music. Those are all extremely important. And so what I would say is, if we do planning correctly, we can have a contingency plan in place if the budget comes in less than we expect. If we build up our reserves, we can protect some of the things that we value the most. But we need to do this not just 1 year out, right? We need to do this in a deliberate fashion.
Thank you. Ami?
Yeah, so the core functionality of educate our students, and the core of that, I would consider would be the academic programs. So in my opinion, whatever services and auxiliary services are necessary to support that mission would be the key. There are several legal mandates, and there is also state set standards for education, so those have to be met. Outside of that, for the rest of the activities, rather than think of eliminating activities because the budgets may not be available, I think it would be useful for us to, at that time, look at finer cuts rather than think of it at broad swaths and eliminating entire activities. We should be looking for the devil that hides in the details and be able to consolidate programs perhaps. It might need to have some programs have higher fan-in rates, but we should be able to decide through community input, if necessary, what programs are necessary. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amount of, I would say, standard for the education. Our district actually do a lot more, and the extra programs and clubs are what students love most, because this is what actually bring out their biggest potential. So with the budget, we are kind of lowering some of the support we used to do for some of the programs and that we support tremendously in the past, but I do see a way to compensate for that. We have a very supportive community, parents, community, non-profit organization. I myself involved in a few non-profit organization board. We're actually fundraising for some of the activities. I think this is a very good resource we can actually use to keep supporting some of the programs, this including sports, arts, science, STEM, all of the activity. I do think with a tight budget, we can explore these outside resources. Also, the district's trying to get grants from state and federal, and so I think that's also a helpful resources for our budget.
Thank you. Okay, our next question, we will start with Stan. If you are elected, will you vote yes to later secondary school start times for 2025, 2026?
So our district parents have been organizing for many years. I think the initial effort was 15 years ago before we actually moved to these start times. Parents explained that kids need sleep. It's about their health. In the more recent history, in the last 5 years, parents have come to board meetings in an organized fashion and said, look, we need healthy start times. So I absolutely support later start times for our secondary schools. I hope we can do this in a cost-efficient way. Our district does have a bus consultant, and this is one of the things they asked him to look at. But it's really about the health of our kids. And I understand there's sports and clubs after school, but if your kid is in sports, I mean, their sports performance is tied to how much sleep they're getting. Their risk of injury, risk of concussions, all of this is related to how much sleep they're going to get. Let's give them the best health and the best chance for the future that we can.
Thank you. Ami?
Yes, unequivocally, yes. I don't even think what would hold it back would be the funds. I think the teachers and the overall community would support changing this. There are a few logistical issues, and I didn't know of this. I'm only hearing of it through the current board meetings and of people who've come up and spoken. There are some logistical issues that have been worked up that have been brought up by the staff about helping this to self-help that students require after school, timing of sports. So there are some logistical issues that I think need to be worked through. But overall, we need to find a way to work through that and make those decisions. But for sure, this has my full support.
Thank you. Shari?
Definitely yes for me. As Dr. Standen and Sue said many times in our board meetings, this is a health issue for students. I've seen kids, including my own, suffer from lack of sleep, and this leads to depression many times. They just cannot get up. It's scientifically, their sleeping cycle is later than adults, so they couldn't help. Somehow I wanted to cry for them because this is so hard. The high school, and if we're moving ninth grade into high school, we're adding one more grade kids into this level of starting early. I really sympathize with them. I hope that we can at least give them 30 minutes more for them to get a little more sleep. I understand this can be can cause many issues, and I was involved in several committees that discussing what can be the solutions, including sports clubs, and we'll try our best to maintain the level that students, parents that needed at the time.
Thank you. And Susan?
So that's a hard one to answer, so I'm going to answer it twice. As a mom who has witnessed this with my own children and who has listened to this good committee's work for a very long time, I'm completely compelled. I understand. I see the science. I believe it. It's real. And if I could wave my fairy wand and make it happen, you bet. I would do it tomorrow. As a trustee, though, I have to give a different answer, which is I can't promise you I would vote for it, and it would be irresponsible for me to do that until we know what the financial impact is. But of course, if the finances are manageable, the money is there, we can make it work, yes, I would vote yes.
Thank you. Okay, we will start with Ami. Do you support closure or repurposing of school buildings if it could save money?
If closing of schools would save a material amount of money, then yes, I think the board would consider closing the buildings. And I think Dr. Scanlon has brought this up multiple times. While that may be done, in order to, if the needs of the district arose, whether that's through UPK or any other programs that need to run, or the student enrollment goes up and those buildings have to be opened back up, there'd be a substantial cost associated with doing that. So while it is possible to close a building, I think we have to look at the things that are coming down the pike and make decisions based on that, not just on a one-time charge of what we might be able to save in one single year.
Thank you. Shall
So yesterday's board meeting, there was a discussion about a potential use of 5 classrooms in Nassau-Cack by BOCES. The decision was a no, because the price provided by BOCES are so low that it doesn't save us as much. So if this goes on, we probably will just say closing a school building doesn't save us much and will only cause issues from later on if we have more students and if later on we have pre-K programs. So far, just looking by what has been happening now, I don't see the benefit of closing a school building at this point. There was also discussion closing the administration building. In my view, that might be a better solution than closing a school, but still, the administration building holds the Three Village Academy. So there's always a balancing point. I would say if it doesn't save much, then it's probably not a good idea.
Thank you. Susan?
I am open to anything that makes sense for us. I do wonder, though, if repurposing in the end is going to make more sense, knowing that we have the UPK issue coming down the road not too far from now. I also would love to see us grow our academy, and if we had the space to sort of consolidate and maybe bring up, you know, our 7th and 8th graders into the academy and have them have that opportunity in our alternative school, I think that would be amazing. So the short answer is I think we need to look at our space and figure out the most effective and financially reasonable ways to utilize it.
Thank you. Stan?
Our district has had declining enrollment for the last 15 years. Our elementary schools are well below their capacity. The current restructuring plan to move 6th graders out of the elementary schools and into the junior high schools will create even more space. Closing an elementary school will not only save money on efficiency improvements, but it could provide some level of income. Not a lot, but I'd rather we have the money than we don't have the money. Still, closing needs to be done thoughtfully. There are state mandates for universal pre-K in 2030 and 3-year-old preschool by 2035, and we need to make informed predictions to make sure we don't run out of space. Closing a school can be disruptive, as some kids will inevitably get separated from their friends and sent to a new school. However, there are some positive social outcomes possible as well. In our district, we have 5 elementary schools feeding into 2 junior high schools. So one of these elementary schools, every year we split up groups of friends when the students move up to go to different junior high schools. Closing an elementary school could fix this long-standing problem that repeatedly undermines our students' social connections at a critical time in their development.
Thank you. Okay, we will start with Shari with the next question. Have you considered advocating for consolidation of school districts to reduce costs of administration, health insurance, et cetera?
Yeah, this was discussed for several years. Practically, there is an issue because Three Village is very big, and if we are actually very happy, open for any discussion. If we consolidate with another district, it's possible. It will look like we absorb them. The feedback I got from other districts is they are not happy with this scenario. So if they are open to discuss with us, I think so far our district is very open to discussion. However, particularly there were issues, so we have to get these issues solved to make it work.
Thank you. Susan?
I do not think I would be terribly enthused with something like a county-wide school district program. I would be willing to learn about anything, but I think the more possible thing would be us absorbing a much smaller district, like let's just say Port Jeff. And yes, of course we could do that, and that changes the conversation in many ways. If we even took just their high schoolers right now, that may change our ability to bring the 9th grade up to the high school. But it is a conversation we most certainly would have. It would be, you know, not only a chance to bring the children in and help out that district, but obviously it brings in revenue as well. So yes, I'd be open to the conversation.
Thank you. Stan?
So I'm open to hearing any specific plan that people have that can save the district money, and really, it depends on the specifics. I do like that we have local control over our schools, so having a school district where, we're giving up local control to get sort of a bigger bureaucracy, it doesn't sound exciting to me, but, I'm willing to hear it out. There has been discussion, I think I've heard at several board meetings, people have, at least it was mentioned that doing something like merging with Port Jefferson would be a good deal for them and not a great deal for us. So we do need to look at the specifics of that. But I'm open to hear ways and creative ideas that people have to save us money.
Thank you. And Ami?
Look, if it's financially viable, I think we absolutely should consider it. It's something that the board should consider and look at and investigate. I actually have to admit I don't know enough about the benefits that would arrive to go through such a move. So I'll have to admit that I don't know it and look into it and gather input. The one statement I'll make is, it at least feels like in our area, we do identify with our school district. It's almost a brand. It's a source of identity for us. It's a source of identity for our students. I don't know to what extent the community would support that. So this is not my opinion to make. I think it's something that the community needs to weigh in on, and I'd rather find out from them what they want to do.
Thank you. Okay, we'll start with Susan with the next question. What are your views on the current national debate over banning or restricting books in the school libraries?
No, 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 and no. That's my view. There is literature, knowledge is a really precious thing, and we have teachers here to guide our children, to help them toward appropriate books for their reading level, for their interests. Our libraries are safe spaces of learning. Banning books is a just big no in my world.
Thank you. Stan?
I'm also not a fan of banning books. I think if you think of where kids are getting inappropriate and toxic content, it's the internet, right? It's their phones. That's the place we should focus our efforts, is getting phones under control, especially in school, right? Like, we have lots of parents, we have different families, everybody has the right to raise their kids the way they want to, that's fine. But at school, we do have some measure of what's the school culture, what are our priorities. If it's really education, let's create a distraction-free environment for our kids. So I wouldn't say let's ban books, and I would say instead let's focus on getting phones under control.
Thank you. Ami?
I agree with Dr. Bach here. I think most of what the students would pick up, and if we banned books, would be from the internet, and they'd have pretty easy and unfiltered access to that. And on the subject of banning books, we hire very competent people to educate our children. They make decisions on the curriculum in coordination with administration, with state mandates, and I think they should be allowed to pick what the educational content is in the classrooms. They should be able to guide our students to the knowledge they wish to discover together. And I don't think the board should be in the business of dictating what books they should or shouldn't be using in the classroom.
Thank you. Shall we?
No for me. So if the concern is some of the contents of the book is not preferred by some parents, students, we do have our teachers taking very careful consideration about what books are required to read for the curriculum, and we have very strict rules on that. Whenever there is a concern about certain books, parents or whatever group can point this out, and we do have a committee to review and see if that's the case. So I think our program can address this concern. Otherwise, I'm open to any discussion with this.
Thank you. Okay, we'll start with Stan with the next question. What unique perspective, skills, and expertise do you have to enable you to help guide the district through challenging times?
I represent different groups within our community. I am a parent. I am an elementary school parent. That is a unique view in this school board, right? You can ask teachers how the kids are doing, how is educating kids, before COVID and after COVID, and it's very different, right? So I am also an educator, so I teach computer science at the university level. I see, I know the challenges that teachers experience in terms of they want to teach the kids material, right? They don't want to be managing behaviors. They don't want to be competing with kids are using their phones or on TikTok or something. It's like it's impossible to compete with that. I'm also a community member, right? So I do pay taxes here too, and I'm very cognizant that the community members have not really had independent representation on the board in a long time. And I am running as an independent candidate. And so from these three perspectives, I'm willing to gather information from everyone and make decisions in everyone's best interest.
Thank you. Ami?
So in my role at work, it's my job individually and as teams to collaborate with large organizations, including those in public sector and healthcare, where some of them may have bargaining agreements with their employees. As part of my job on a daily basis, what we do is create partnerships with these entities, and this includes balancing the requirements of my own firm as well as those of my customers and of their customers. And in many cases, this includes balancing, again, needs of multiple factions within these clients. Not everybody wants to work together. There's always infighting. And part of our job is to make sure that we can get these people to collaborate and come together for the right outcomes. So I've had a long history of doing this, and I hope to bring some of that experience to the board.
Thank you. Shari?
Thank you. When I was a student, I do very well academically. However, I see other kids around me can do very well on different things. So this is what I really want to emphasize in public education. Every kids have their own talent. So I hope that we provide programs that not having a single standard for them, but they can succeed on whatever they like. I myself is an engineer. I know very few women are taking engineer as a profession, but I'm very proud of it and love it. I'm not good on social activities. I might be awkward. I'm introvert, but I just think I can be one that doing what I love, have my passion in life, and this is what I hope to see in every one of our kids.
Thank you. Susan?
I think the thing that I bring comes from my professional background as a journalist. I come in at everything very neutral. It's critical to me to get to the core of facts, and it is totally possible for two things to be true at once, but you're not going to know that unless you're asking a lot of questions and hearing everybody who wants to and deserves to be part of a conversation. So I think that helps build consensus. I think that that allows the community to feel more engaged in a process. And internally for the board, I hope I have helped create a safe space where everybody feels like their opinion is valuable and can be shared safely and respected.
Thank you. Okay, we'll start with Ami for the next question. What is your philosophy on the do no harm policy for Regents exams?
I do think that a student ought to be assessed at regular intervals, and those assessments should be part of their performance as at the end of the year. I know during COVID we made several adjustments, and we allowed for grades to be only included if they were beneficial to the final grade at the end of the year. At the end of the day, I think the teachers can make that decision as to how they want to balance the assessments to deliver the final grade. This is another area where I don't think we should necessarily, as a board, turn around and determine, you must use X percentage or you must use Y percentage. It'll depend on the educational needs of that classroom and what the teacher wants to drive through the class.
Thank you. Shari?
So on one thing, we don't want to limit our kids' talents by testing them on things. However, there are skills that needed for them for college applications, for professional tests. So on one way, building these testing skills through schools may help them in the future. On the other hand, we do understand testing could bring anxiety to students. So that's, I think, how the no harm policy is trying to help with. So the board, I believe last year, the board had a hard decision about what the percentage, and we actually take what the teachers committee recommended, and we take what parents has reflected and just choose a balancing point. I think that's the way the board did it, and I'm happy with that decision.
Thank you. Susan?
This was a tough one for me, and it was one that I have to be honest, it was really helpful for me to talk to a lot of different parents about. So I absolutely agree that we need testing. You need to understand where we are, if people are attaining mastery, if teachers are helping kids get where they need to be. That's not the issue. The issue is is it really fair for a student who's done extremely well all year and has a really bad day that day, or is ill that day and tanks a Regents, to really suffer for it, especially when they're going up against kids from other districts in the state that the grade doesn't count. So that's really didn't seem perfectly fair to me. So I was happy to accept the recommendation of the committee and in keep it. I had wished we could perhaps lower it a little, and I think that would be a direction that I wouldn't mind us heading in to make it count for less in the final grade.
Thank you. Stan?
I was actually really surprised when I was listening to the discussion about do no harm, because I almost feel like the grading of the students is the responsibility of the teachers, right? The board shouldn't be micromanaging, should this particular test count as 10% or 5% or 15%, right? But, okay, it got up to that level. There were some issues, as Sue mentioned, with the way the Regents exam was done. So my concerns were some of the tests were done a few months before the end of the year, so you weren't really testing them on the full content of the course. For special education students, there were less accommodations possible for certain Regents exam than would be, for example, a regular exam that's done in class. Some classes had a negative curve where you would get a certain score and the score would be adjusted downward, right? And as Sue mentioned, right, if someone just has a bad day, that's something that we can't correct, right? So those, in general, I do support, if the choices are do no harm or 10% of the grade, I would vote for do no harm, but I actually would prefer that the teachers can make these types of decisions.
Thank you. Okay, we'll start with Showery. Do you think our school district should reduce the number of administrators?
It's been done already, and we will consider the further on what's the need. For example, if there is needs that our current administration cannot handle, there could be more administrator. However, if the needs goes down, we could still go to scale down as well.
Thank you. Susan?
That's a loaded question. I know there have been times in the past where the community has looked and said, oh, there's too many there. Sometimes you might have been right. Right now, currently, I think we are doing so much better than we have in the past. I think the ways that we have reduced currently, that we're going to reduce next year, and we may not even be done consolidating and reducing, even lowering the titles of certain positions, which saves us money. It's easy to think these aren't necessary jobs because they're not in the classroom, but they are necessary jobs. These are the people who are managing everything from curriculum, to social emotional health, safety in the buildings. So I think the answer is you have to right-size the administration to the needs of the students.
Thank you. Stan?
So 2 years ago, the Budget Advisory Committee did some analysis, and so they compared comparable school districts and what percent of their budget are they spending on admin versus what percentage of our budget are we spending on admin, and our percentage was a lot higher, right? So there have been some reductions. If you saw the budget presentation, there's some savings going on, but that type of analysis I think is really important. So I would want to update that analysis with this year's numbers, right? And if we're spending too much, figure out how are these other schools going, meeting all of their state mandates while, basically doing it more efficiently than we are. And if we could copy their process to save money, I'm happy to do that. That said, there are state mandates, right? So I think one of the ones that gets repeatedly mentioned is every teacher needs to be assessed by an administrator 3 times a year, right? So we have a lot of teachers, so admins are going from building to building to building, doing these state-required assessments. So we can't just cut without thinking about what we need to do, but let's see what other districts are doing, and if they can do it more efficiently, why not us?
Thank you. Ami?
Yeah, I think it's really important for us to continue gathering benchmarks from other school districts to see at what ratios they're operating at. I think it's a very useful data point. But as others have mentioned, there are also requirements, whether there are state-level mandates for ratios, whether it's support staff that are needed to support teacher training, for example, in the adoption of new technology, whether it's assessments of the teachers themselves. There are a lot of business functions that occur in a school that are perhaps hidden from daily view of us in the community. I'm glad the board and the BAC, takes measures to be as transparent about that as we can and bring that information to the community. Could there be opportunities? I'm sure if we look, there might be, but this is something that has to be looked at by the administration on an ongoing basis and evaluate where there might be room for improvement. But I know the school's already been doing that.
Thank you. Okay, we'll start with Susan with the next question. What is, in your opinion, the biggest challenge our school district is facing, and how would you resolve it?
The only biggest? Wow, that's tough. I think the social emotional needs of our children have just become so great. It's not just COVID, it was happening before COVID, and it's even worse now. And it's not just our older students. Things you were seeing manifest in teenagers, now you're seeing happen in our elementary schools. It's devastating. So, we are charged with their care, and that is part of their care, and we do a great job now. I would love to see us be able to expand the number of counselors in schools, number of school psychologists. I think the parent universities are amazing and very underattended, but I think there's a lot of opportunity there for the district to work with families, to assess needs, to find out what we can be doing better, how we can help support them, and help our kids. Some of them are really, really struggling, and we need to be there for them.
Thank you. Stan?
The biggest challenge is figuring out how to make the finances work and how to do that in the long term, right? The state imposes a limit on how much we can raise taxes without going over the tax cap, which requires a larger percent of voters to approve the budget. They tried to go above the tax cap several years ago, and it was denied by the voters, right? So basically, it's around 2%, 2.5% roughly that we can increase the budget each year if we decide to tax the community at the maximum rate, right? And maybe we don't want to do that. At the same time, our spending year to year, the vast majority of it is out of our control. It's in the contracts that we have with the bargaining units. And the salary increases are more than 2%, right? So if you have 2 exponential curves and one's growing faster than the other, they're going to intersect. So we're at the point now where we have this continuous pressure of we're running out of money. What do we do? We're running out of money. What do we do? And so we do need to project this out more than 1 year in advance. We need long-term planning, and that's something I hope to bring to the district.
Thank you. Ami?
I think there are 2 things that I'd like to look at. One is, there's an increasing amount of performance pressure on our students. It's a highly competitive environment. The current economic conditions are not making it easier for them to find jobs and take the next steps. So this pressure is, I think, causing an increased incidence of mental health issues within the student community, and I think the school will need to provide support services to support these students. That's, I think, an area that needs to be looked at. The other is, as has been mentioned, the budget itself. There are certain contracts that are coming up for renewal. And it's not just the contracts and the expenses in the contracts, but expenses of everything, whether it's fuel, utilities, and the expenses that these employees would face themselves in their daily lives. So it's not enough to simply say, let's eliminate 60 positions, or let's just not give people raises. That's not sufficient. So a balanced view would have to be taken while maintaining the budget, the load on our budgets.
Thank you. Showery?
To me, the biggest always the budget, because we have been under the pressure of budget for the past few years. especially in the past 2 years, the inflation is so high, and where budget is still at a 2% level, it generates a lot of issues. So in my view, there has to be solutions, and in the past 2 years, we have been trying to find ways to, let's say, in my view, the most natural way is teachers' retirement, and we do have quite a number of teachers actually was hired 30 years ago, and they're at this retirement age. I myself very sad seeing very good teachers leaving, choose to retire because our kids benefit from their excellent teaching. But I think this is a natural way to do it and help with our budget.
Thank you. Okay, we will start with Stan. What would you have liked to see in this year's budget that was not accomplished?
Honestly, I would have liked to see some acknowledgement that taxpayers exist within our district. Right? Our enrollment's been going down for a long time, and our taxes keep going up. And you know, it's not a lot to ask that when there is money, let's say we find some way to improve efficiency, right? We have $3 million available. What do we spend this money on? I don't think it's a lot to say that there is some slice of that should go to taxpayers. Let's, for example, distrust from the community a bit, right? Because you hear, we have all this efficiency savings. Look, we saved $5 million. But as a taxpayer, they didn't really save anything, right? It's like we saved money in one place and now we're spending money somewhere else. So I do worry about the trust of the taxpayers in our district. I want excellent schools, but we need to acknowledge that they exist, and this really is taxpayer money. It's not free money.
Thank you. Ami?
I'll say this both from a personal experience of having a 14-year-old and getting him up and into school before I've even woken up, and hearing from the community the effect that this is happening, that this is having on their children. The science is there, all the evidence points that school should start later. If the budget was the only thing that stopped late start to school being implemented, I wish that weren't the case and that we had found the funds to do so.
Thank you. Shari?
Again, this is a budget. I think everyone's very concerned about it, including myself. So what we're saying is enrollment going down is a trend all over Long Island. This is probably not we can help. However, we do compare ourselves to the very good districts. That's where we stand out about. I myself compared our budget to Syosset and Jericho. So if we count as spending per student, just the budget per student numbers, we are very close to Syosset. Jericho has much higher spending compared to us. So from that point of view, I think we keep under the cap is okay for us. Making it lower will just lose our advantage standing as a very good school district.
Thank you. Susan?
My Achilles heel is financial insecurity, for sure. So it troubles me not having the reserves in a much higher state. So I wish we could have repaid the money we borrowed from ourselves to stay open during COVID and begun to really build up those reserves. And I really hope our legislative committee will join with others across the state to get Albany to allow us to build those reserves up even higher. Because if the state's allowed to, we should be allowed to as well.
Thank you. We'll start with Ami. What are 3 goals you would like to see accomplished in the next 3 years?
A long-term plan that balances the increasing expenditures that we are looking at with the tax revenues that are going to come in. Short-term, late start of school implemented. You brought that up. And lastly, I'd like to see through an acknowledgement and work in a collaborative way with the bargaining units and the contracts that are coming up to see them settled for the long-term viability of the school district.
Thank you. Shari?
So 4 years ago, when I was running for the board, I have 3 goals, and still I want to keep these goals if I'm running, elected to the board again. So first, engage all students. I want to ensure that districts still provide a wide variety of programs on art, math, music, science, and sports, so that every student can engage in activities that they truly love. Second, invest in teachers. I hope we can expand the training opportunities, especially on technology-assisted teaching, to help teachers develop professionally on what's needed. Third, to innovate in the future. We fully recognize the resource available from the community and the professional networks. Don't waste taxpayers' money on unnecessary resources. That's it.
Thank you. Susan?
I would say foreign language in the elementary schools. I think that would be amazing. As I mentioned earlier, I would love to see us expand our academy to the younger grades, perhaps 1 year at a time as we roll back. And I would love to see us bring in our own technical vocational training program. I think it's naive to think all children should go to college, but all children should leave our doors prepared for meaningful and purposeful work. And I would love to see us house that here and be able to take in tuition students from other districts. That would be fantastic.
Thank you. Stan?
So I've mentioned it several times tonight, so I'll mention it again. I would like a long-term financial plan, right? And so, okay, our administration, they do plan things, right? It's not like they're surprised every year, like we need to figure out what we're going to do for the next year. But I would say, while we do have plans for 5 years, we don't have a 5-year plan, right, if that makes sense. So we know things are coming up, like they're going to require us to have electric buses, so that the contractor we use for our buses is going to start charging more, right? We know that there's a mandate for pre-K coming up, so we need to start planning for that, right? But we don't make revenue projections. This is how much money we're bringing in. This is how many teachers we have. How much attrition do we need each year to make sure that there's money available for things we need? Things like elementary school language, right? If that's really something we do, we need that in a long-term plan. The 2 other things. This one doesn't cost any money. Teacher feedback on policies. Things like we ran a survey at the high school before. I want to expand this to the other schools to figure out how well our policies are doing. And then something for the taxpayers.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to ask just 2 more questions for fairness so that everybody started the same amount of times with their answer. So this question, we will begin with Showry. What are your thoughts on how the Budget Advisory Committee was run this year? Was it effective?
So the Budget Committee has been running for 3 years. Every year we change the format based on the feedback we got from previous year's Budget Advisory Committee and the feedback from the community. So I think it's an ongoing process. We are happy that we have this much involvement from the community to help us scrutinize the budget, I would say, and help us to find out ways where we can improve. To make it more efficient, I think there are definitely room to improve, and we are open to all feedbacks we can get.
Thank you, Susan.
I'm very grateful to all of the members of the Budget Advisory Committee. It's a volunteer position. It's a lot of information, and people were really very enthusiastic and very helpful. Whatever information they can glean for us is very helpful. Do I think we can continue to evolve it and get better? Absolutely. I think part of that's going to be continuing letting people serve for multiple years so that some of that institutional knowledge carries forward with them and that learning curve is not so steep. I think giving them some time alone in the beginning without any administrators there to set their own goals, set their own objectives, and begin to gather a list of the data that they're going to need as we progress through the state aid run season so that they can make their best decisions. And I think they need to choose kind of their own leadership, to have sort of their own point people carry that process all the way through. So we shouldn't be running the meetings. They should really be running the meetings.
Thank you. Stan?
So our community has a lot of financial expertise. So I think one of the goals of the Budget Advisory Committee was to really tap this expertise to be able to come up with a plan for our school district that makes sense. That said, for I think most of the last 3 years, what ends up happening on the Budget Advisory Committee is you get presentations from admin that discuss the programs that exist within our district and describe how great they are for students. and they don't include any financials, right? The financials for each year usually comes very late in the process. The Budget Advisory Committee always asks as a recommendation, please give us the numbers earlier so we can do the analysis. So how can we improve this? I would say let's focus on how have the budgets worked over the last several years. We have had declining enrollment. How have we been able to pay for everything? And then let's also look at the future out. If we want to do things like elementary language, how much is that going to cost, and how much other spending do we have, and how are we going to be able to pay for everything that we need in the long term?
Thank you. Ami?
Yeah, so at a moment of self-reflection at the end of the Budget Committee, Advisory Committee, we actually collected how we could do things better, and we represented that back to the board. And I think within there were recommendations such as perhaps identifying at the beginning of the term certain charges, so perhaps to look at the long-term goals of the district that the district wants to achieve, and to possibly prioritize them to be able to get the input from the community on how to prioritize them. That would be one way. The other thing we also recommended is that if the departments were going to present to us, that perhaps they should present to us with some asks, right? Like, for example, we want to grow X program, which will need Y dollars. So let's get that information out on the table so that the Budget Advisory Committee can provide input. We are an advisory committee, we're not a decision-making body, but this would be a way for us to funnel community input to the board. So I do think we could have done a few things differently, but as a whole, the community came together to provide that input to the board.
Thank you. All right, this will be our final question. It's 8:46. We'll start with Susan. If elected as a trustee on the Board of Education, how would you handle situations where the Board of Education must implement a rule or regulation from New York State that you do not personally agree with?
It doesn't matter if I don't agree with it. Unfortunately, that's part of the charge. That's part of the oath that you take. So I would work with everybody collaboratively to find the best possible way to implement this, find the funding for it, work by consensus, and I would accept the decision.
Thank you. Stan?
So being on the board, it's an unpaid position. There's no salary. And to do a good job, you need to dedicate a good portion of your time to the work. And then for some decisions, no matter what you do, there's one group that's going to get upset and sometimes be personally angry with you, right? The state does tie the hands of the decisions that the board makes lots of times. So a lot of parents were, for example, angry during COVID about certain mask policies that we had, but those policies came down from the state, right? So board members don't really have much choice for those types of policies. Our job is to implement what the state requires to do to make sure that we stay legal according to the state's perspective, because they're always threatening that it's the state aid portion, right? That's their control over the districts, right? So state aid is very important. It's still a very large part of our district, and so we need to do what it takes to maintain that portion of our budget.
Thank you. Ami?
Yeah, as Sue mentioned, this wouldn't be something that I'd have to decide if the state mandates it. We have to meet those mandates. It's as simple as that. I think what the board can come in to do is, if they have financial implications, to look at alternative ways to, while we meet the mandates, to mitigate any negative effects that we have on the community or the education or any other effect that we deem as negative. So the board can assist in gathering information or opinions from the community, from the stakeholders, the parents, the teachers, and then look at ways that we can mitigate any negative impacts that might come out from that decision.
Thank you. Shari?
If the state mandate is already in place, we can only follow. However, there is a period of time actually the legislators are discussing about these policies. That's a time actually we can really work it out. And I think the district has been doing very well, asking support from the community to write letters, call the legislators about the state cut to us. That works extremely well. Both parties were, in Albany were supporting the decision, and we were not hurting by that. I think in the future we can definitely, whenever we hear something that will affect us, do the same thing. We have local legislators, we have state legislators, just call them and try to find a way to make things work for us.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to begin with closing statements in reverse order, so each candidate gets 2 minutes to make their closing statement, and we will start with Susan.
Thank you. Again, my sincere thanks to the PTA and to everybody here at Ward Melville for organizing the event and running it tonight. This is a really important chapter in the story of Three Village. Our students are thriving by every measure, and we're standing ready to do even better. But as you've heard tonight, there is a lot on the horizon that you're going to need strong and steadfast leadership to meet. We're in the midst of the restructuring of our grade levels. We're working to become more adaptable and resourceful with our finances in the face of declined enrollment and questionable future state aid. We've got the negotiation of our teachers' contract coming up, addressing a later start time, preparing for UPK and U3K, the currently unfunded mandate to electrify all school buses, and so much more. I am ready and I'm prepared to face these challenges with you and help take Three Village to the next level. I'd be honored for your vote. Thank you very much, and I wish all of the candidates good luck.
Thank you. Shari?
I'd like to thank the PTA Council for organizing this excellent event and thank everyone who sent these thoughtful questions. I myself learned a lot from the candidates as well. So for our Board of Education, students must be the priority of all decisions made by a board member. The role of a board member is not simply voting yes or no based on personal preferences. As a board member, I would activate research resources and programs, openly share information with the community, listen to our community, and make decisions based on inputs from a broad range of resources, students, teachers, community, and experts from the state and federal offices. I am available across multiple platforms, online and in person, for people to reach me and give feedback. It's the board's responsibility to provide oversight and accountability on behalf of the community, to negotiate with numerous unions independently, and to focus on the interest for students. I will not support any interest that is not toward the educational goal. Thank you.
Thank you. Ami?
So the school districts performs exceedingly well. Over the last 2 years, 97% or more have graduated. We have some of the highest graduation rates among students with special needs. Students from this school district go on to gain admissions at Ivy League colleges, Division I sports teams, and join the military. Over $4 million, for example, are brought in art scholarships. So by all measures, and student athletes compete at national and state levels. The programs of the arts, the music, and in all extracurricular activities, our students perform at state and national levels, and they bring back accolades. These are the signs of a highly functional, well-funded, well-run educational institution. And my hope is that by channeling my professional experience in business and in education, I can assist and support the board in continuing to make these choices on behalf of the community, to support our students and for our students to excel in life and in the next stages of their career. I did want to take a moment here to also, I wanted to thank the teachers and the Teachers Association for endorsing my candidacy. I did want to bring up tonight that while I am joyful to and humbled to receive their attestation, I'm running as an independent candidate financially, and that I'll be reimbursing the TVTA for all expenses that they may bear on my behalf. I know there's been some conversations on social media around this. I wanted to put that to rest, and I'm happy to answer any questions around that as well. Thank you for organizing this and the opportunity to ask and answer questions. I really appreciate it this evening.
Thank you. And Stan?
I wanted to thank the Suffolk PTA for putting this event together. I also wanted to thank the other candidates for a very civil discussion, and honestly, a very civil campaign. I know we have neighboring school districts where this doesn't happen, so I'm very proud of, to be in Three Village myself. I'm raising my family here in Three Village, and I'm very happy that I have chosen to do so. I have a house with a yard. Our community is safe. I know who my neighbors are, and we have excellent schools. Living in this community is, by very many people's definition, the American dream. I'm running for the Board of Education because I want to keep our schools strong. The schools impact a lot of people, And so we need to get input from a lot of sources when making decisions: parents, teachers, and community members. I'm committed to seeking out everyone's ideas, truly hearing them, and taking them seriously. We talked about a lot of different policies, but more specific, more important than any specific policy is the issue of good governance. Good governance means you bring different perspectives together and you make decisions transparently. And I'm also running as an independent, and you can tell because if you look at the signs, the entire, it's one name on the sign, it's just me, 100% paid for by myself. But as a board member, I'm willing to work with anyone else who is serious about improving our schools, who discusses matters in good faith, and who puts the interests of our children first. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes our evening in the forum, and I want to thank Jen and the PTA Council for allowing us to come in and moderate, and I wish all the candidates the best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Nice job, Susan.
Nice job.
As usual.
Thank you so much. It was good. Freezing. Good.